Mm. I'm so excited to welcome back to the show our guest today, best-selling author of Euphoric, Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You. Our guest is leading alcohol-free empowerment expert who helps build a vision that is much bigger than a beverage. She is the host of the Euphoric podcast, an empowering show on the limitless possibilities of an alcohol-free lifestyle. Welcome, Karolina Rzadkowolska.
Lindsay, thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you back. For any of our community who is maybe new, you and I connected back in 2021, which seems crazy because it does not feel that long ago. It was episode 156 where we got to kind of break into this whole alcohol talk, alcohol free, reduced alcohol. So I kind of want to hit on all of it again as we're going into this series of I'm going to say gray area drinking as well as alcohol free, just really exposing our listeners to it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be so hardcore you're an addict or you're alcohol free. So if you would like to just start with a little bit of your journey, and then we'll kind of peel the onion layers back and talk about all of it.
Yeah, of course. And it's so cool now in 2024 compared to when we talked in 2021. This movement's been growing so much more now. There's so much people like they're interested in it, new businesses that are coming out of it. It's really cool to see. And I think that this is like something you've heard of other people maybe going alcohol free. So love to touch on it. But I think this whole like kind of black and white thinking about alcohol has been a real detriment to our society because it's either that, yes, you have a problem, you're drinking in the morning, this is like a huge issue in your life and you have to stop drinking, or you're fine and you socialize and do all the normal things with alcohol, relax, all that kind of stuff. And that kind of black and white thinking has made it almost seem like an embarrassment or a stigma to even reevaluate alcohol in the first place. So it's kind of like we lose our freedom and our intuition at the outset because we're being put into these two categories, either you're normal or you're a problem. And that's the biggest thing I've seen with a lot of my clients in my own story is our intuition speaking a different message to us, right? And that's kind of where I found myself. Back in college, I picked up a lot of heavy drinking and party skills that I'm not maybe too proud of. But as I grew up, especially in my mid to late 20s, I really settled down. And when maybe I drank too much in college, in my later 20s, it was really about trying to be as adult as possible and as healthy and mindful as possible. So Monday through Thursday, I lived quite a healthy lifestyle. I would go to yoga classes, I would drink green juices, I would meditate. But then every weekend, like clockwork, alcohol was still a big part of that weekend. It was a big way to relax, see friends, go to parties, hang out with people, whatever. And every single Monday morning, I woke up feeling like I made 2 steps forward with my healthy progress during the week and then 5 steps backwards over the weekend. And that Monday morning, I felt depressed, lethargic, tired, exhausted, ashamed, just like starting at square zero all over again. Every week, this cyclical type of living. And like I said, I really felt trapped in that because I was really eager to actually remove alcohol from my life. I was like, this is tiring. I don't like this. However, I just didn't think I had that option because it's like, well, does that mean I have to start going to AA meetings and wear this label alcoholic? And, every time I wanted to take a break, I would just look at my social calendar and be like, well, there's that networking event, there's that wedding, there's that dinner party. It really felt like I didn't have permission. And it wasn't until I heard of Dry January, which has now been growing so much year after year. In fact, there was a statistic that 44% of all Americans surveyed were going to do Dry January this year. Now, I don't know how many actually did, but that's insane. That's almost the majority of people. But I heard of it back in 2017, 2018 era. So I did it the first time then. And that was the first time as an adult that I actually experienced a whole month without alcohol, which is kind of crazy to say, but actually not that crazy. That's how most adults kind of live with alcohol as a regular part of their lives. I loved it. I loved how deep my sleep got. I loved how much energy I had in the mornings. I loved how much self-love I felt every day. There was no shame. There was no loss of breaking any rules or any self-esteem or anything embarrassing that happened. I was just like, every day I'm showing up for myself and creating the best future I can. And when February came around, I really wanted to keep going with this alcohol-free thing. But again, it was that social events. It was that, well, if I'm not an adult who drinks, then aren't I abnormal? Doesn't that signal a problem about me? And I drank a few times that February, and it was that contrast I think I needed at the time to show me, oh my God, even 1 to 2 drinks makes me feel frustrated, fuzzy, not having a good time anymore, horrible sleep, horrible morning next day, picking little fights with my husband even. And I was like, you know what? I was so happy in January. I was like having these great, beautiful experiences in nature and hiking and having these deeper belly laughs. I was like, I was having way more fun not drinking in January. And that's when I really decided to take this more seriously. And I committed to another break at that point and really started to unpack my mindset around the desires I had for alcohol so I could lose those completely. And that was basically 6 years ago. I just celebrated my 6th year alcohol-free soberversary, and literally my life has improved in every single facet ever since. I used to use alcohol as this tool to kind of get through the week as fast as possible and then celebrate on the weekend. And I didn't realize it was because deep down I was actually unfulfilled with my week. And I really changed my life around to find that deeper fulfillment. I launched my own business, became an author, now make a big impact in people's lives to really kind of create the life I've always really wanted, so that this little beverage that gives you a 20-minute high is really meaningless to me.
6 years. Congrats. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you.
And so hope-filling for anyone who's hearing this and just going, wow, I don't know what that looks like. And I would love to unpack a little bit of that, because there's the social component through all of this. There are the trips, the first time of showing up to an event and going through it sober and what that looked like coming out of it. So yeah, let's keep the hope piece going, that you didn't in the beginning feel like I can do this, right? Like that grew over time as you continued to show up for yourself.
Yeah. And the way I did it is that I wasn't deciding to quit forever. That never was a decision I made, especially nowhere near the beginning. But I really liked the idea of committing to the 30 days, because every week when I just tried to drink less, that was this very ambiguous ask. When they say to make goals, they have to be very clear and there's a definite outcome. Drinking less did nothing for me, because it was well, what does that mean? If you have only one beer, but it's an IPA and you still have a headache the next morning, did you succeed? Not really.
Yeah.
So it was this
Yeah.
crazy ambiguity that was so hard. And so I think that really committing to those 30 days, and in my book, I actually recommend 60, because it so many more changes happen over 60 days. I was just I'm going to not drink no matter what. But I didn't think I would be happy about it. I thought I would be really deprived. And I think that's where the question really is that I wasn't as hopeful at the beginning, because it felt like you were just taking away my favorite toy and that I would just have to suffer for those 30 days. And so I think the real transformation happened when I really discovered how much not only better physically I felt, because that's maybe an obvious side effect, but how much better emotionally I felt, how much I wasn't missing alcohol, how much I was really discovering my own sense of fun and passions outside of this silly beverage. And I think that's when the hope started building day after day. And every day that I didn't drink, it was really proving to myself, oh my gosh, look at this woman. She's superwoman, 21 days without alcohol. Who's ever done that before? And it just started to build this confidence, because for so long, alcohol was that Achilles heel for me. So it really did get stronger day after day. And I think that's what's really helped build the confidence to then go out and become an entrepreneur and do a lot of other riskier things, is I was continually getting out of my comfort zone and building confidence around that yes, every day, every week that went up, it's as if my self-worth and self-esteem were going up with it. And I would say the whole entire time alcohol was in my life, my self-esteem and self-worth was just going lower and lower.
Oh, so interesting and so real. And I feel like I want to give our listeners permission, because they could transfer this over into, it's really any habit that we're not proud of, or it's not aligning with our true self. And I can picture that with people who feel out of control with eating, who feel out of control with smoking, drinking. It's this, until we can prove it to ourselves, we can live in the things that feel good about it. And I wrote down these words from you because I liked it. You reframed is what was happening there. Instead of feeling deprived, missing out, giving up something like the favorite toy that you're talking about, you were able to really see it as this euphoric, best days of your life, best self, best mood, adventure. And what if we could do that with food too? That when we're not overeating, we're not overtired, or when we're well slept and we set good boundaries, then, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a whole new person. I just think that so often we look when we need to change and it does feel deprivational. So let's talk about some of that reframing and mindset work, because you do a lot of mindset work with your clients, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I basically see that the way that we've been all brought up in an alcohol-centric society is that we've all been conditioned to think not only is that the most normal thing you could do, it's the fabric of our social lives, and it's abnormal if you don't, right? Then you have to kind of deal with that. And that is a lot of conditioning and contextually telling us this beverage is so important in our lives when it's really not. It's a silly beverage. We've totally changed how we approach cigarette smoking in the last few decades. It's a very fringe activity, I would say now, I think so, compared to a mainstream one. And I think the same thing is going to happen with alcohol. And that's because we're all having this wake up call around it. It's really awareness building. And for so many people, it's not aligned with their values. It's not aligned with the healthy lifestyle they want to build. And I think that giving that permission to explore that, to take breaks, to have intuitive leanings into it, and recognizing that if we can change the subconscious programming, if we can change the mindset, we can actually remove the desire. So not that you're like painfully giving up the thing that you love the most, it's actually something that you completely have no desire for anymore. And that's magic. That's literally pain-free, and it feels so good. I haven't had any cravings or any kind of desire to drink alcohol in 6 years because I dove so deeply into doing this subconscious work, which meant for me anywhere from changing beliefs I had, like alcohol helps me relax or helps me sleep, all BS, right? That doesn't happen to the human body after we drink alcohol. Onwards to even more complicated things like, well, isn't alcohol this historical thing we've always had in culture? And I really had to work through every little belief I had that really supported alcohol in my life and in a truth-finding way, in a way that not only sometimes science would back it up, but other times it'd be like, is this empowering for me to believe that I need a drink to feel confident? What does that say about my intrinsic confidence? What does that say about how I feel about myself and really loving the authentic version of me versus needing a mask to kind of be some other version of me, right? So I really worked through every single facet of that mindset to really remove the desire, and kind of formulated a system, a framework to do it so that my clients could do it as well. And that's also been this incredible process of not only, removing all that subconscious programming, but then in its place, we figure out what really brings you joy. We figure out what really makes you happy. We figure out what really is fun for you. And the way I see it, they've had these experiments where they're able to put these electric nodes on rats, and they're able to directly, with an electrical impulse, stimulate their pleasure center. And they found that if they give the rats the ability to do that themselves, like they press a button and they're able to stimulate their pleasure center, the rats will stop eating, they will stop playing, they will stop mating, they'll literally die just trying to get that pleasure. Could you really say the rats are having fun? Or is it this like sick dystopian kind of version of fun? The rats aren't solving a maze. They're not enjoying their time. They're literally just sitting there glued to this like pleasure stimulator. And I kind of argue the same thing around alcohol in little less drastic terms, maybe, is like, as adults, we kind of lost what our intrinsic pleasure, fun, and joy really stems from. And we have this easy shortcut of, okay, well, let's just drink this drink and fireworks will go off in my brain. And so whenever someone's going through this experiment, it's really a matter of asking those questions again. Well, what brings you true joy? What do you want out of your life? What it gives you pleasure? What is fun for you? And at first, maybe it's something about, rediscovering what to do on a Friday night. If you're used to drinking every Friday night, maybe it's picking up different hobbies or going to a different class. But what I found time and time again at these little hobbies or new experiences kind of lead someone into a deeper passion. And that deeper passion is so fulfilling for them and something they've always wanted so much that literally alcohol becomes meaningless, because it's like this quote that Napoleon once said, you trade what you want now for what you want most. Right. And it's alcohol is this flimsy 20-minute high followed by multiple hours of negative consequences, like 48 hours, versus what you want most. And what you want most could be different from person to person, but it's usually an activation of their deeper longings of purpose and meaning and fulfillment in their lives.
Oh, that's so good. And it's so true. And okay, let's rewind for a second and just talk about, because when you said you were taking these deep dives, just to give a visual for our listeners, is it a lot of journaling? Is it a lot of worksheets? Is it a lot of talking it out in like-minded communities? Like, what did that look like? And what do you have your clients do?
Yeah, I mean, personally, for me, it was like a lot of journaling, but I have my book, Become Euphoric, and then my signature program is called Become Euphoric. So it kind of puts everything together, from the journaling and the questions, the specific questions to be asking and the different levels to work through. First, just really listening to your intuition, recognizing what beliefs are holding you back around alcohol or keeping you stuck, even with the simple question of, why do you like to drink? That can tell so much about you by just answering that question. And there's probably 10 to 20 reasons everybody has. It's not just one reason. So it's this multifaceted thing. It's not just this one domino we have to change. There's so much to it. We talk over socializing because a lot of people have limiting beliefs around what it means to socialize without alcohol, whether it's being less confident or feeling left out or losing that sense of belonging and camaraderie, all the way from healing those emotions that we like to numb up with alcohol and really finding those deeper pursuits and those deeper passions. So that's the kind of framework I like to lead people through. And the whole time is that subconscious rewiring of those initial reasons we like to drink to really find that those are really not inherently true for us anymore at the end, right? And like really finding that process to debunk all of those. And that's literally when the desire goes away.
And again, that whole concept or thought of a desire going away is amazing. Like if we can really grasp that that can happen, wow, then we don't have to fight it. Like you had to deep dive and you had to fight it kind of hardcore in the beginning. But and then I think people feel like, oh, is this what the rest of my life's going to look like? And it's no, you just need to do it now. And it'll get easier and more fun as you go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to recognize too, we've all been drinking, like probably no one listening to this is 18 years old, right? We've all been drinking for decades, right? And so I think
Yeah.
this process can take anywhere from a few months up to even a year, depending on the person to person. But that's nothing compared to how long alcohol has been programmed into your brain and how much like it's kind of like ripping the band-aid off. Like this will be gone forever if you truly do this work. And it's really not about like, okay, you'll never drink again or something like that. Obviously, it's a personal choice, person to person. But if you don't have the desire, you're not being controlled by something outside of you, right? Like you actually truly have the choice. And if that means like every year at a wedding, you have a little glass of champagne, then that's your choice, right? That's not my choice. I have a different choice than that. But it really is about you being in the driver's seat of your desires instead of being controlled by these reflexes that have been kind of programmed into your brain over the years.
Right. Do you find that a lot of your clients come in going, I don't want to stop. I just want to learn how to, like you said, be in more control. And then do you find that the more that they do stop, that a lot of them end up just alcohol free? Is that kind of like a natural progression?
Yeah, here's the little trick. We trick you. So I like to think that, I tried to drink less for so many years. And like I said, it was ambiguous. I broke so many different rules. I had all these rules, right? Like, okay, no IPAs, no more than this many drinks, no day, like no like brunch drinking or anything, like all these different rules. It was so easy to finally break one. So it was always a matter of like, feeling that loss of trust. When you drink just one beverage, an alcoholic beverage, it already deteriorates your judgment center. You're already having a hard time making decisions about what you want to do next. Alcohol also heightens our cortisol in our body and our kind of this withdrawal response in the sense that all these adrenaline, cortisol, dynorphin are getting pumped through the body. So it's really natural to want another drink after you have the first one. And it just becomes this spiral where you're not making good decisions at that point. We've all been there. So I really found that that was very, very, very hard. And what I love to see is that for someone who really truly wants to moderate and really wants to mindfully drink, the best way to go about that would actually to be to take a break, because that break will retrain your habits. It will retrain your mindset. It will go deeper into all those like subconscious rewiring that I talked about. And then once that feels really good, if you want to reintroduce it, go for it, but then still be very mindful about it. Like, did it make you feel any negative emotions? Then maybe that's not a sign that this is something you want to keep doing. And this is the trick. This is what we find. This one research by 1 Year No Beer found that 80% of people who take an extended break from alcohol don't go back.
Interesting, because
they might try it again once or something just to test it, but they actually maintain the alcohol-free lifestyle because what they find on the other side is just so good. And, for me, alcohol was such a way of playing small. It was a way of like, I always wanted to be a writer, for example, and I wrote so much when I was a little girl and an adolescent. And then as soon as I start drinking, it really just dries up. I just stop writing. And I never lost that desire to write. I would always make these New Year's resolutions that I want to write more, and it didn't really work out. And honestly, I couldn't see it back then, but today I can. It was so much easier to open a bottle of wine than write the next great American novel. It's like I wasn't really going for the life I wanted because I always had this easy route, this comfort zone, this just thing that everyone else was doing. And for me, that symbolism of alcohol was a way I played small. And without it, I'm playing so big. Why would I want to ever de-evolve or regress or go backwards? You know what I mean? So it's really like the alcohol-free version of you is more confident, more courageous, more radiant, more healthy, more happy. What does going back signify? you
Right,
know?
right. I know. I can just picture you being like, oh, I just want everyone to taste that. Like you have to taste it. You have to experience it yourself. And especially depending, I'm sure you get the full range spectrum of clients that come in. Do you feel like most people you can get to that point where they can experience it? Like, what's maybe like the hardest example of somebody that's walked in and you're like, oh, we're gonna have to handle this one with kid gloves type thinking?
Yeah, of course, of course. So have you ever heard of the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks?
Yes.
Yes. So, just for the listeners who haven't heard of it, it's basically this idea that we have this threshold for how much love, success, abundance, connection we can have in our lives. So, once we go over this threshold, all of a sudden we don't believe we're deserving of that much love, connection, success, whatever word most relates to you, and we self sabotage. And so that's, I think, the tricky part is someone can go through sometimes really reprogramming the alcohol beliefs, but maybe from deeper wounds that haven't been healed or integrated yet. Once they start feeling so much happier, so much better, it's like they're scared the other shoe will drop, and there's this sabotage like that happens there. And I think that's a normal behavior that happens in a lot of different ways. When we start growing, there's a part of us that's like, ooh, this is scary, right? And so that can often happen. But honestly, within the first year of going alcohol free, I would never use the word even relapse. I don't like any of those negative alcoholic kind of words that they use in that type of industry, because it's like it really denotes that, like, oh, someone was already supposed to be an expert at this point and
Mhm.
never drink again, right? It really is like under a year alcohol free, you are kind of healing, going through all this, doing the mindset change. And there really should be so much compassion and no blame and shame about it. And if you've ever seen this graphic where like success is like basically someone walking up a staircase, but also success is this crazy, like spiky
Yes.
thing, like both things count. And so some of that can come up, some of it can come up as you're going through an alcohol free journey. So much of your emotional life will be coming up to get healed as well. Whether you have that upper limit I just described by that Gay Hendricks book, or whether it's some other things that, are need to be healed because that stuff has been being pushed down for so long with alcohol, literally as an anesthetic that's been numbing your emotions. So that stuff does come up to be healed, which is, I think, a beautiful thing, but it can take obviously a lot of unpacking and integrating.
Yes. And again, this is where it links like so closely with food and why it can't be just a quick journey, that we do have to do the unpacking, the onion layers, the peeling back, because then the sustainability happens. Then we can keep it going and it's manageable versus we're on the wagon, we're off the wagon. And again, that relates to everything with habits. I want to talk about, you had kind of this fun conversation on one of your podcast episodes about just really thanking your future self, that when you don't drink the night before, that morning self wakes up and it's just like, thank you. So much self-love and compassion. Walk through your own experience with that or what you hear other clients say.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that to me is the definition of self-love, is really doing things with future self in mind. And there was so many times when I wanted to reach for another drink, and there was this part, the logical part of my brain was still active, and it was like, Karolina, you have a meeting tomorrow, you have a presentation, you have this or that. And it was just like, whatever, I'll deal with it. It was like the past version of me didn't give any flying Fs about the future version of me in that moment. And when you wake up the next day, you actually feel disrespected. You feel unloved. You're like, why didn't they care about me the day before? Why didn't past version of me love me enough to set me up to have a good day today? And so the complete opposite happens when you remove this toxin of alcohol and you don't drink the night before. You wake up feeling refreshed. You wake up feeling, after having good sleep, you wake up feeling the best version of you and the right foot forward. No, whatever, if it's a hangover, a headache, or just that little fuzzy feeling we can feel after drinking, you wake up just 100%. And you do feel loved and respected. And like that past version of you was looking out for you. And I've seen this analogy carry out in anything from washing your linens before you go on vacation to handling an administrative bill or something that, you don't want exasperated. It's like we have to do uncomfortable things sometimes in the present moment in order to set our future self up to have that happiness, self-love, self-respect, success, whatever it looks like. And I think to me, that really helped build up my self-love from something that was really deteriorated from alcohol, from all of that loss every time I woke up feeling like that. And it wasn't every day. I didn't drink every day, right? I only drank on the weekends, but still it was enough to be cyclical enough to feel very, very, tangible in my life to really rebuilding that self-love. And I think from there, it really like spilled over into so many other areas of my life, because without that self-love, I didn't really have the self-belief that I could even go after the life I really wanted. Because it's like, well, do you think you could do this cool stuff if you can't even keep your promise of not like having more than one drink tonight? You know what I mean? And it was when I really built that self-love and really was taking care of myself in such a deep way. It was like, maybe this guy truly is the limit. Maybe I'm capable of a lot more than I ever thought.
Yeah, so much time and energy opens up beliefs. That's so true and so cool. I have a fun story for you around this because I was talking to a client the other day and she was giving this whole, and I think this is really good. And you just described it, and I want our listeners to hear this, that we can kind of picture ourselves almost as like different people throughout the day. So we were talking about, why aren't you showing up to your yoga mat and in the morning? And one of our barriers that we were trying to debunk was like, maybe if you set yourself up in the evening, then you just roll out of bed and literally like hit the mat in the morning. And so she goes deeper with it and she's like, okay, so my nighttime self is going to, my serving self, because women get in this mode of I'll do it for somebody else. So I'm going to serve myself and put my water by my yoga mat. I'm going to even put a cozy towel. I'm going to put my journal down. That way I can like roll over and journal first. So I've served. And then when I wake up in the morning, myself that would love to be pampered a little bit feels pampered from that past self that did that. But like it feels like two different people almost. And yet you get to like show up and experience it for yourself. And you're the one who created it, which how cool is that? I was just like, that's such a great way of thinking about that. We can serve and then be served all,
Yeah.
all within our own doings.
I love that story so much, and I think it even goes back to this reparenting thing, no matter how our childhoods went, we can now be a parent to ourselves or a lover to ourselves or a best friend to ourselves by just these actions and these behaviors that we put out and instill. I think that's really beautiful.
I have not heard the reparenting. Go into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Well, like this idea that if your inner child has had pain or a lack of affection or even just a lack of boundaries, like we can now be that, split the person into two, just like you did as well. There's that mothering version of ourselves who can really take care of ourselves now, really set the boundaries, really, give the self-care, really give the love that we maybe didn't have as much growing up or so. And then we can be the recipient of that as well. And I think that's a really beautiful concept.
It is. It gives again this hope that like just because we were set up a certain way doesn't mean that that's how we have to follow through and carry out for the rest of our life. We have the ability to change it. It is, I'm going to keep saying this, it is time and effort, because I think that people get really frustrated by that time and effort. There's promise though that if you put it in, you'll see results. You've planted the seeds. Now you have to be patient.
For sure.
Yes. You're really good about this too. You talk about power of awareness. And I think for some people that awareness is really easy because they're just more intuitive. And then we have the individuals who like really need handheld through awareness. So kind of what's some of your pathways to help bring out that power of awareness?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think anyone who wants to make a change in their life are already really exhibiting signs of listening to their deeper intuition and getting kind of woken up if the status quo isn't working anymore. So I'd like to applaud everyone who's like embarking on any kind of change, that they're already really getting that sense of awareness, right? And I think it's really, becoming aware enough to know yourself very well. Sometimes I like to think of what's the purpose of life. And the only two things that I really keep coming back to over and over and over again is first is to know thyself. And the second is to help others. And I only think it's through the first one that we can actually do the second one. Because when we're just being a martyr and serving without taking care of ourselves, we've all seen how that cup runs out. But when we really know ourselves, we grow and we grow and we grow, and then we have something to give. And so I think that through that ability of awareness is really, it's just really getting to know yourself in such a deep way and really recognizing, first of all, like something like your values. What are your values? Other people might be living X lifestyle or Y lifestyle or doing this or doing that. And we can get so caught up in like what the Joneses are doing, especially with alcohol, right? Everybody else is drinking, but it's like, but what are my values? What is specific to my priorities and how I want to live my life? And really being proud of being individualized there and not copying anyone else or feeling like you'd have to live someone else's lifestyle. It's also, I think, really good to be just aware of how our thoughts and emotions progress throughout the day. For example, a lot of our thoughts that we have come from something called an inner critic. They're not to be believed and just taken at face value. There's so many different thought work and different exercises we can do to really get to a deeper truth that feels good for us about our thoughts instead of just the face value inner critic. And then same thing with our emotions. I think a lot of times when we go to these easy habits, like just drinking, like I said, opening a bottle of wine was so much easier. It's like we have this like trigger, this reaction. We don't even recognize what the deeper emotional feelings are really under that and what they're trying to tell us. I really do believe the maxim that our emotions are our greatest teachers and our greatest barometer to really understand what does need to be healed or what needs to be shifted in our lives. For example, my dominant emotion when I was drinking was boredom. I felt bored from my job. I felt bored in my life. And so drinking was the one exciting thing to do. And I didn't recognize that I could have probably drinking over my boredom for the rest of my life, or I could actually figure out why I was bored and find some new challenge and more purpose and meaning in my life to never feel bored again. Sure, I might have a Sunday afternoon that feels a little lethargic and feel a little bored, but on general, I don't feel bored with my life whatsoever because I'm always challenging myself now to these next new levels as I'm growing and growing. So I think that power of awareness can happen from our thoughts, our emotions, our values, and especially even with alcohol. None of us just drink because it's just what we do. There's something underneath it. There's some reason. Like when I was drinking socially, I really did think a drink made me more confident. And I really had to get to the place where I could articulate that. It sounds silly to say. Like, obviously, logically, I probably didn't believe that, but that was the underpinning of why I was reaching for a drink. I was really shy growing up. I'm introverted. So that is how I learned to socialize with other people. It turned me into an extrovert. And so I think that power of awareness can really help us understand what the deeper motivation is underneath our behaviors. And that's where we can make that big critical change.
Yes. And we talk about that a lot as far as like, what are you hungry for? What are you thirsty for? Is it energy? Is it sleep? Is it me time? Is it alone time? I was going to say, the more I dig in that area, mine typically comes back to I'm hungry for me time. Like anytime the kids leave the house and everything opens up and the sky's the limit, it's like, ooh, do I want a glass of wine or do I want to? Okay, a book is just to satisfy. It's like just that ability to be like, you get to do whatever you want with your time. So it is interesting. And then I think from like a weekday to a weekend, and you had said this earlier in this podcast even, but like it changes, our needs change. And there's like 20 reasons why a drink might sound good at a time or why food might sound good at that time. And that we really have to do the deep dive and the list making so we can really see it that you're craving, I'm bored, well, I want to do something. I want me time. Like, I just think if we can keep getting to those levels and the awareness, and again, it might come easy to you listeners, or it really might not. Like, this might be an area that you need somebody, that third party that's going, let's talk about it. Let's coach you through this. Let's pull out the right questions. I feel like I can't let you go without asking a few more things, but one would be because you have been living in this space and you've stayed just as excited. It's growing for you as far as excitement, not dwindling. Talk on that. Like, what is growing within your business? What are you doing? What are the exciting things ahead? All of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I've been already sharing this level of excitement, but maybe I'll lose a few people when I say it like this. But why I'm so excited about this isn't a central question about the alcohol. It's not whether alcohol is better or worse for us in our lifetimes. Obviously, you know what side I'm on. But what I've seen time and time and time and time and time and time again is that you remove this one thing out of your life and literally everything blossoms. And the deeper things that I really care about, the sense of purpose, fulfillment, and meaning, those are the things that really, really blossom. I've seen women come into this, remove alcohol, and believe in themselves in a level they've never believed in themselves before, and actually go for the career they've always wanted to go for and then excel at it instead of staying stuck in something that wasn't right for them. I've seen women launch businesses and write books and form communities and do nonprofits, and just so much empowerment that happens there. And so right now in my business, we have a certification program that actually launched last year that certifies new coaches in 5 different modalities: mindset coach, alcohol-free life coach, success coach, NLP practitioner, and hypnotherapist. And this is what I'm so excited about, because women have all had the same experience, this awakening around, I am so much, the sky's the limit basically without alcohol in my life. I've had so much transformation. I've done so much inner work already in my life, the things we've already been talking about. Now I'm ready to start sharing this with other people. And I think that's how we change the world, is we do go through our own transformations, even our own challenges, learn how to overcome them, learn to do the inner work and really all the things we've been talking about, the mindset work. And then we can help other people with that, whether that's informally, like by just talking to a friend or your family or someone who comes to you, or formally by getting the proper training and then doing it out in the real world. And so that level of like impact we can make in the world. I mean, I'm only one person. I'm not going to help the whole world change their relationship with alcohol. Yeah, right. I need more people out there who can talk about this and do all of the deeper modality, not only healings, but also that sense of, well, what is your bigger goals and potential in this lifetime? That's what I get really, really excited about. And so that level of just human change, how the subconscious functions, I think I'm just obsessed with. I could keep learning about how we run on the inside forever. I think it's so fascinating, but also how powerful we can be when we remove a lot of those constraints, whether it's limiting behaviors, limiting beliefs, limiting blocks. And I think you're really right. As you said, it's really hard to see our own stuff. There's that saying that a jar can't read its own label. And I work with coaches, I work in masterminds, I work in all these things to help me get to the next level of success and embodiment in my work. And that's just something I want to keep passing on to other people, whether they want to give that or grow in it or whatever the order is. That's what I'm also really excited about. I also host retreats, which I think is so cool, because I love meeting women in real life and actually hearing about their transformations and then seeing that what's that next chapter unfolding in front of them, which I think is really beautiful in an in-person kind of experience. So I love doing more of the in-person work as well.
How many retreats do you have in a year?
Yeah, so I've had like 2 before. Right now, actually, no, we're having 2 this year. One is like a tropical destination, Costa Rica, and the other is actually part of my certification. So if you join the certification, there's a retreat included in it.
That is amazing. I'm loving the certification part of this. Good job. I'm just so proud of you. I feel like I am cheering you on from this side and cannot wait to see what keeps growing and happening within your business. So, is there another book in the future here?
There is. There is. Yes, yes, yes. I'm taking a little methodical time to write the second book, but I have some very crazy history. My family history survived and some didn't survive, some really intense experiences in World War II that I'd love to share about, in the sense that we are literally the strong children of these ancestors who survived so much, whether that's famines and wars and disease and lack of rights and all this kind of stuff. And I really do believe that we are the trailblazers, and we are the generation that's meant to achieve the dreams of our family. So it's really a book about possibility and purpose, really by honoring our ancestors too. So that's a really special project to me.
Yes, that is so cool. I'm chills the whole time you're talking about that. Oh, so good. Okay. I asked you this last time. I'm going to ask it again. If our listeners heard nothing else, what's like the one thing that you hope and pray, if you could wrap your arms around them, that they walk away with today?
Yeah. It takes a lot of like awareness to just even decide whether this is something you want to dip your toe into, because all the meaning we've attached to looking at alcohol as like a bad thing when you're looking to remove it or something like that, or deprivation or whatever it is. So I would just ask them, if you feel an intuitive pull, if you feel any kind of intrigue, ask yourself the question, how would my life improve if alcohol wasn't in the way? And really imagine that down to like, what would my health look like? What would my workout routine look like? How much more maybe happier could I be? How much more presence? How much more productive I could be? And sometimes it's harder to see the bigger picture until you've experienced it yourself. But I think intuitively, a lot of people can already paint a lifestyle of what every facet of their life would improve. And let's not say you even had to stop drinking. Let's say alcohol was never even invented. Like imagine you're in an alternate universe starting from now and alcohol's not even around. How different would your life look? And if you like some of those answers, if you like the vision that you're painting, it's probably a big clue that you're totally ready for an extended break and to do this mindset work because it's totally possible now to have that kind of reality.
Oh, I love it. Agreed. Thank you. You are wonderful. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, and joining us again today.
Of course. Thank you. It was such a pleasure.